Hello, thank you for joining this Building Safety Act seminar focusing on retrofit. The presentation today is being given by Varun Soni, who's a member of the Golden Thread Working Group for the Building Regulations Advisory Committee and part of the team developing the British standard BS8 6441. Charles Hingston, he's a partner working in the Building Surveying team. Andrew Yates is a partner, the Electrical Engineering team. Bob Terry, who's working in the Structural Engineering team, and myself, who's heading up the overall building safety offering. I'll now hand you over to Varun.
Thank you, Barry. I'm Varun. I head up BIM and Digital Transformation within Calford Seedon, and I'm going to take you through a little bit about the organisation and a little bit about building safety. Next slide, please. So Calford Seedon are an award-winning multidisciplinary firm. We've been trading for over 80 years and pride ourselves on being a trusted provider of high-quality professional services within the construction industry. Next slide. We are a multidisciplinary organisation providing a host of services from architecture and BIM to building surveying and civil engineering, as well as MEP and project management. We do work quite closely as a multidisciplinary firm, especially when it comes to building safety and legacy works. Next slide. We do work in a host of different sectors, including commercial, education, healthcare. But today what we will do is we'll focus on the residential and the mixed use regen side of things. As we said before, we do pride ourselves on providing the best quality services, and this is actually shown in the memberships that we have and the affiliations that we do have. We work very hard to maintain those, so it's very important that we keep our standards up to scratch. As an organisation, we are based throughout the country, up in Birmingham, London, and we also are based out in Cambridge, Essex, Kent and Hampshire. We do service the whole of the UK and have projects quite far up north, including Aberdeen, when it comes to building safety. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk a little briefly on on the full Building Safety Act and some of the areas that we really need to focus on over the Act and what that will mean for yourselves. Next slide, please. As an Act, it gained royal assent on the 28th of April. It meant that it became a legal requirement for higher risk buildings, and it introduced quite a few significant changes, but mainly around the construction process, introductions of new building regulations, and also the introduction of a new national regulator known as the Building Safety Regulator. The Building Safety Regulator will take on quite a big remit and a big role, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. What will come from this will also be the fact there'll be secondary legislation that is going to be developed over the next few months. The consultation on that is already out now, so it is worth you having a look at that. Next slide, please. So in terms of the Act itself, it is actually split up into altogether 6 parts, but there's 3 key parts that I would really like to concentrate on today. What you'll find is within part 2, it sets out exactly what the new Building Safety Regulator is required to do, what they're accountable for, and who they actually are. It also defines the term of higher risk, and what's really important is note that the bill has changed from high rise to high risk, mainly because higher risk has allowed us to be able to put in a definition of a building that is currently 18 meters or 7 stories. But the key part is it also allows for us to change that, because it's now not a high rise, it's a higher risk. So that can drop down at any stage, and the aim is that it will drop down in the future to meet newer and more assets at that time. Part 3 looks at how the legal requirements around the golden thread and the new gateways come into play. So it introduces things like clause 30 and 88, which is all around the legal requirements for the golden thread to begin before gateway 2 is brought in. It also introduces gateway 2, which has to start before construction can begin on site. And when we start looking at part 4, it starts to look at the occupation side of things. So how are we actually going to be able to occupy maintain that building, submit building safety cases to the regulator for approval to be able to obtain building safety assurance certificates. Part 3 and Part 4 also look at Gateway 3. So there is an overlap on them parts where you look at Gateway 3 and the handover of that asset information from construction to actually managing it in the defects period. It picks up on a few areas, certainly around clause 135, where it starts to pick up on building warranties, the requirements to be able to register with National Housing, the New Homes Ombudsman, and the requirements that even where you've got properties that are currently being constructed, it doesn't matter if they don't fall under the gateway provisions in time, they still need to be registered with the New Homes Ombudsman so they can pick up that 3 to 30 years liability period. And that'll go to the contractor's requirements to be able to do that. Some of the key dates for you to think about as well are Gateway 2 is expected to come out October 22. Gateway 3 is expected at the start of April 23. And there is a legal requirement for all legacy buildings that fall under the remit of a higher risk building to be registered between April and September next year. In order to register, you will actually be required to provide a risk assessment and gap analysis of where you are with the golden thread and how you'll be able to keep the golden thread up to date with the information you've already got in the asset, and also where your risks are and how they will be managed and mitigated over the coming years. That information must be submitted for you to be able to obtain a temporary building safety assurance certificate. And once you've received that, you will be given from 6 months to 5 years to be able to fix anything that needs to be fixed. And then that will allow you to then be able to continue to have your residents within the organisation, within the asset. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pass it over to Charles, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about building surveying and some of the works currently undertaken on building safety projects.
Thank you very much, Farron. Yes, my name is Charles Hinkston. I'm a partner building surveyor here at Calford Seedon, and I'll be talking you through how we're working with our clients at the moment. So since the inception of the Building Safety Bill and now Act, Calford Seedon have been working with clients to assist them in achieving the requirements of Gateway 3 and achieving registration of all new and existing high-risk buildings, and ultimately obtaining a certificate from the building safety regulator. So Gateway 3 occurs at completion of any work and is described as the stop-go point prior to registration and commencement of occupation. Registration of all new buildings is required prior to occupation, and registration of existing high-risk buildings by September 2023. In order to register your high-risk building, you'll need to compile all of the information that you hold about that building as a digital record, provide a gap analysis of that information, and a rectification program to show how you're going to fill the gaps in any of the information that you have. Our assistance is currently being provided in various ways, whether it's carrying out specific building safety work, i.e. cladding replacement and remedial works, balcony safety work, designing sprinkler systems, designing fire alarm systems, and designing and installing roof void fire breaks. Examples of these projects are at Luma Apartments, where we are acting as employers' agents, clerk of works, and CDM principal designers to oversee the facade remedial works of 158 affordable homes in northwest London. At Eastgate Estate, we are providing multiple services for the replacement of the insulated cladding system to the existing facades on the estate. Our role at Christchurch Court was for our building surveying team to carry out a survey of the loft areas of a block of flats in Eastbourne. And on completion of this element of work, we prepared specifications and drawings which went out to tender, and then acted as contract administrator through to installation of the fire breaks within the loft space. Due to the success of this project, our instruction was extended to carry out similar work to the adjacent sister block. Similar work has also been carried out for RBKC, and works are now completed to 3 blocks, and we've been instructed to carry out works to a further 21 blocks. Safety cases have already been prepared to 2 existing blocks, and 2 additional blocks are currently being prepared, and a further 6 have just been instructed. Whilst we continue to analyse what the building safety regulator is expecting to see from the building safety case, we have prepared an information request tracker, which we believe will include the information that will satisfy the regulator that your building is safe. From this, we will carry out a review and prepare a gap analysis to demonstrate where further information needs to be presented. Information that can be produced by Calford will include structural reports for each of the blocks, 3D drawings to form part of the building asset model, M&E reports to record the fire safety and firefighting equipment, as well as confirming compliance with safety of all services within the building. And our health and safety team can produce a retrospective health and safety file. Other information that may be required will be a fire risk assessment and fire strategy, but unfortunately Calford are unable at this time to provide these services. We've also been drafting building safety cases and have reviewed the information and prepared gap analysis for our clients to demonstrate where information is missing. We then work with our clients to rectify where these shortcomings have been identified and assist in obtaining that information. Our consultancy service requires us to fully understand the management of building safety within your organisation to enable the implementation of the correct procedures to ensure that the correct information is in place and ensure that it is used correctly. This would include ensuring that the correct people have the required competency to fulfil the role that they are required to do. And with this in mind, we have prepared job specifications to enable clients to recruit and also to train their current staff. Our BIM manager, Varen Sunny, has been advising clients on the most appropriate software for their organisation to fulfil their requirements and ensure that it can be adapted to work with current software packages. As well as ensuring that the correct people are in the right roles, we need to ensure that the latest information is accessible and that any gaps in the knowledge are filled. This will ensure that any faults are identified and any faults are identified on site and are reported to the correct person to ensure that they are correctly addressed. Finally, we are also aware that resident engagement needs to be considered, and the issues that are reported by any residents are resolved in a transparent way, and that discussions are held with residents to ensure that they are satisfied with the end result. I'm now going to pass you over to Andy Yates, who will discuss further the M&E surveys that we're able to undertake on your behalf.
Thanks, Charles. As Charles has touched on earlier, there is a requirement for landlords or the accountable person to gather information on their existing properties and ensure any record information is easily accessible, reliable and accurate in order to achieve the Building Safety Assurance Certificate. A golden thread of information for the building is required to allow someone to fully understand the workings of the building and keep it safe. On existing stock, where this information is not available, surveys can be carried out on the M&E services to plug any gaps of missing information and ensure the Building Assurance Certificate is achievable. Utilising our electrical and mechanical engineers, we can carry out surveys and collate the prescribed information with a formal report or condition schedule. Information from these surveys can be collected in a common data environment and presented in COBie format, so it aligns with the requirements of the golden thread. We've also been working closely with our BIM team on recent surveys, presenting this data within Revit models. Within the Revit model, the COBie data can be assigned to each asset, providing the accountable person with a reliable information management system. Specific reviews and audits on life safety systems can also be provided, so a more detailed understanding of the building critical systems can highlight any issues with non-compliance. Audits generally consist of site-specific inspections on specific services such as emergency lighting, warden call, fire alarms and AOV systems. The condition and operation of these systems are inspected as part of a non-intrusive survey. All systems will also be reviewed against the requirements of the fire risk assessment to ensure the current operation is as required. Commentary can also be made on the service logbooks to ensure the term maintenance contractors are carrying out compliance duties correctly and systems are serviced in line with the correct British standards. Next slide, please. Where it's deemed that there is insufficient fire partitioning following intrusive surveys and opening up of the building, there can be the need to change the fire strategy from stay put to simultaneous evacuation. As you may well be aware, in line with the guidance of the National Fire Chiefs Council, it's required to mobilise Waking Watch to assist with simultaneous evacuation. The Waking Watch is a very costly way of implementing a change to the fire strategy. Therefore, a temporary fire alarm is recommended to be installed at the earliest opportunity. The NFCC guidance provides details on what is required for a temporary fire alarm based on 5839 Part 1. An L5 system should be installed with heat detectors located in each room that has a window or vent in an external wall that has a notable fire hazard. It should be considered whether smoke detectors should be installed in common areas. However, these should not initiate an evacuation of the building and only provide a warning to the evacuation manager. This is to prevent any nuisance activations, which, if occurs regularly, can affect the residents' trust in the fire alarm system. The main deviance of the NFCC guidance from BS 5839 Part 1 L5 systems is the requirement to have a sound pressure level of 85 dB at an open doorway of each bedroom. This is generally achieved with a single sounder located in the hallway or landing of each flat or house. Our team have experience of working on these, installing these temporary fire alarm systems. We can get our team to site to carry out the survey of existing buildings in a short period of time and review the building layout and any existing fire alarm and AOV systems installed. From this, we can complete a design to meet the NFCC guidance and produce a specification on scope of works. This design would have to be agreed and approved by the fire engineer and then be used to appoint a contract, and then can be used to appoint a contractor to complete the works. Previously, we've assisted with the appointment of contractor, whether this is through with a tendered or negotiated route. Due to the nature of these works and the need to get them progressed at the earliest opportunity, it's common for them to be negotiated or a term contractor appointed. Our team are able to provide contract administration duties while these works are being carried out, as well as site duties such as monitoring the installation. More importantly, we can witness the commissioning of the fire alarm and ensure that it operates as required. It is also important to review all the certification and O&M information to ensure the complete system is fully compliant. I'll now hand you over to Bob, who will discuss the structural requirements of the building safety case.
Hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Bob Terry, Head of Structural Engineering at Calford-Seedon, and I'm here to provide some advice on the implications of the Building Safety Act on existing buildings from a structural perspective. Next slide, please. From a structural perspective, the main implication of the Act is to provide information on the structural design of the building in a digital format that can be accessed for the remaining life of the building. The information for the new building should not only include all the drawings, but also the design calculations, method of stability, loading capacity, fire protection period, and how that protection is obtained. For existing buildings, the exact requirements of the building safety report are unclear. It is known that a structural inspection and report will need to be produced, with subsequent investigations and reports produced on a regular basis. Again, something unclear as to the period for such inspections. This report will need to confirm the structural form of the building and highlight any notable defects. If no record information is available on the structure, then there will likely be the need for intrusive investigations to confirm the structural form and makeup. If it is not clear, if evidential proof will be needed for the structural design of any existing applicable buildings either. If it is the case and no record information is available, it may be that detailed structural calculations will need to be produced or some form of load testing carried out to confirm the structural adequacy. Next slide, please. In summary, for existing buildings, a structural report will need to be provided confirming the form, use, notable defects and lateral stability resistance. On top of that, there is potential that there may be the need to include structural drawings, especially if there are no record information and the structural form is complicated. Calculations to confirm how lateral stability, that is resistance to wind and sway, is provided. Calculations and/or load testing to confirm the capacity of the floors, and design checks on any key elements that is part of the structure whereby their collapse would affect disproportionate areas of the building as a whole. It is also expected that the final document for the Building Safety Act will provide further clarity on exactly what information is needed for submission to the building safety regulator. All information collated, whether for new or existing buildings, need to be kept in a digital format, which is managed, monitored and maintained throughout the life of the structure, part of the golden thread. In respect of the information which may be needed, Calford Seedon have the ability to provide specifications for any investigations and reports following such to help compile the necessary information for the building safety report. Next slide, please. So review, in respect of a structural assessment, review of any existing documents and drawings will need to be carried out. The surveys of the buildings and there is potential to undertake intrusive investigations should the structural form not be clear. Next slide, please. I'll hand you over to Barry for him to provide more details on information required and how Calford Seedon can assist with the collation of the building safety report. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Bob. Whilst the team have been through some of the detail of the emerging building safety bill and the practical implications it's having on projects, I'll wrap up with a brief overview of how we've been pulling this together and offering support to a variety of clients. We're finding the process is similar for all, although clients are looking for different kinds of support depending on how much work they prefer to undertake. Next slide, please. Therefore, I'll talk briefly about the process and then follow up with some of the client perspectives. So as you can see here, the process is outlined from design all the way through to post-completion. So we'll just head into some of the detail there now. Next slide, please. In terms of design and investigation, it kind of depends on the nature of the building that we're working on. I'll take them through in turn, but they can be interchangeable. In terms of auditing the existing design, we would collate and review the design and the product information along with any technical reports, and we would identify any options for an interim solution to help mitigate the costs as well. Key there would also be preparing a gap analysis of the golden thread. In terms of building solutions, we would analyse cost options and the potential for any value engineering, explore potential funding options and assist with any applications for government support. We would generally look for whatever was the optimum solution for the project and prepare a design and cost report on the proposed solution in conjunction with the design team. The other thing that would be key there would be to ensure any third-party sign-off, such as planning or Gateway 2. That assumes that the design is substantially in place to begin with, whereas some buildings we would actually start with the investigation if there wasn't that degree of information available. And when we're heading into the investigation side of things, we prepare a schedule of opening up works as required to confirm whatever the design solution was and record all findings during the works in case of a potential claim. I'll touch on that a bit more later. The other thing is, of course, is to review the design assumptions against the investigations. So this particular section can be iterative, where depending on what you find in the investigation, it may well feed back into the design where you impact again on the preferred solution. Next slide, please. We would then, once we've satisfied ourselves that the design is in place and that the building as built is understood, then we'd obviously look to progress the works to the next stage, which we can follow through in the usual way. We can prepare a scope of works and details for tender, and we can prioritise the works to mitigate costs as well, which is always beneficial. We would identify potential contractors. The key thing there as well would be to review tender options in terms of traditional or design and build, in order to make sure that people understand how the risk is placed in order to progress works in what's becoming an increasingly difficult environment to fix costs. Prepare scope for third parties as well to assist during the works, fire engineers or building control or what have you. Consultancy support would be given during site works, and that would be often in the form of project management, but also employer's agent, QS and PD services, etc. We'd record all the findings during the deconstruction works in case there is the need for a potential claim, and also to understand further on from what we'd have made during our design assumptions, the assumptions that we'd undertaken. We would act as information manager for the golden thread to be met. That would be key in terms of closing out the process. During works on site, we would undertake a clerk of works role, and we're finding that's of interest in particular to developers. Again, I'll touch on that on the next slide. And we would provide an audit of the COBE data, etc. as well, which Varun's already touched on. Assisting in preparing the building safety case before submission at Gateway 3, we'd do that at completion, and post-completion, we'd assist the client in actually submitting it as well. Following on, we would ensure all Gateway 3 compliance, as Varun touched on before, issuing the digital information in agreed format and integrating that with any asset management systems. Ultimately, of course, that's all heading towards obtaining a building assurance certificate. Next slide, please. In terms of the clients, whilst that's the process, the clients all have slightly different views, we're finding, on the way that they go about this and what their key drivers are. In terms of developers and contractors, at the moment there's clearly a lot of focus on cladding and remedial work and retrospective correction. Now most have signed the government pledge. Previously, insurance was an obstacle to progressing those works, but that now seems to have unlocked. And so most are looking back through existing stocks for the past 30 years to decide how best to correct those. Some have previously been using existing staff, but now this process has been unlocked. They're finding that that's probably too much for individual staff to take on, particularly when they've already got another role in the company that they were undertaking in the first place, that they've been moved away from. So we're finding a number of companies are asking for additional support to back up some of those areas. And of course, there is an existing supply chain there often that they would prefer to work with and that makes sense to work with, particularly if they were involved in the original project. In terms of freeholders, I'm kind of thinking of those in terms of sort of three areas. I'll start with registered providers. Obviously, they own the building. There's some new stock, and where they've got newer stock, the developer is likely to pay for any construction issues, although obviously not if they're caused by maintenance. Cladding and works to the outside, but they may also need works on the inside as well, such as cavity barriers, fire stopping, anything to do with the safety of the building itself. Older stock is a slightly different approach is required. Some of them may have been acquired through stock transfer and can be lacking in information, we're finding. So therefore, there's quite a piece of work there to do to understand the building, but also to get it to a place where you can start finalising the building safety case as well. The key thing is that the client needs to own the building from Gateway 3. And in order to do that, they need to understand they have to do whatever's necessary to satisfy themselves the building's safe for occupation. And that's the journey that we kind of go on together. Slightly different, but in a similar kind of category is the build to rent freeholders. They've got similar issues to RP, but generally they're only working with newer properties in the UK. And so maintenance is less of an issue. They're looking to maintain the value of the asset over a longer time frame, and also looking at the diligence as BTR market develops and assets are beginning to change hands. So that's interesting as well. We're finding we're getting involved more with either properties that are established already or ones that are in the process of being constructed specifically for a build to rent model. And we're finding that the degree of due diligence that the freeholder would like to go through, or the client would like to go through, requires us to get involved and ask all these questions in advance to make sure they won't cause problems later. Funds and banks are slightly different again. In some cases, they've wanted to progress the works immediately, mainly because the value of the asset due to its location was far greater than the amount of remedial costs that would have been involved. So it was something they just wanted to clear from their liabilities. Again, we can undertake a detailed audit during deconstruction in these instances as well to protect in case there's a possible route for a claim for defective works subsequently. Next slide, please. So in summary, although there are clear patterns that emerge, each project will require its own solution as part of the process based on an individual client's needs. The key issue for us was how to provide a one-stop solution when resources are becoming stretched across the industry. As you can see from the slide, in order to guarantee the service, we've pulled together a full offering in-house under a single team for the majority of disciplines. We can work with any third parties preferred by an individual client or their existing supply chain, although we're working closely with others as well if there's any need, such as a fire engineer, building control specialists and contractors as well. We can fill those gaps to make sure that the full offering is there. This ensures that we can take the journey from any point to a positive conclusion, ending with the required building assurance certificate and the building safety case. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to get in touch if you need any further assistance.